Well, good day, everyone. Certainly good to be here with you. This is our second attempt at a live session today. For some reason, we are having just extreme difficulty getting this stream to live. For some reason, it was cutting out my audio in the previous one. And before that, I couldn't get the video up. So, at least number three, second that actually went across the stream. But let's just jump right in. We're going to go to the book of James in chapter 1, and we're going to read beginning at verse 22, or excuse me, 21. Therefore, put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. And then he goes on and says, but be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. We talked about verse 21 yesterday, about how that word can save your souls, and it's necessary for us to have that word implanted within us, right? To get it in there, to meditate, to study it, to read it. That's important, and that is essential. But then James goes on and he says, look, but it can't be just that, right? There's got to be something more to it than that. You have to be doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. And I think that sometimes we kind of get a wrong impression of this. It's as if we are, saying that the Bible is just simply a, marching list or a list of, marches that we do or tasks that we are supposed to engage in. And I think that probably that's a part of it, but there's something bigger here. There's something bigger that I think James wants to talk about. He says, but be doers of the word, not hearers only. So let's just make a couple of points about this. I tell you what, let's do this. Let's read the rest of the context down to verse 25, and then we'll come back and make some comments. But be doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving yourself. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a man who looks intently at his natural face in the mirror. For he who looks at himself and goes away and once forgets what he was like. But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing. Now, it's an interesting story that's always been kind of baffling to myself, to others. What exactly is he talking about, here? Well, I think there's a couple of things that we need to draw our attention to. Number one, that we need to realize that, hearing is essential. He doesn't say, hey, forget about hearing, be a doer. No, he says, be not a hearer only, right? Don't be a hearer only. But you need to be a hearer. You need to be a person who hears. You need to be a person who listens. You know that little word obedience that we find all throughout the Bible? It literally means to hear under, right? To hear under, something. To give our attention to it. Not only to give our attention to it, but to, give our attention to it with the intention of, going out and actually doing something about it. You can't forget the hearing part. It's like sometimes you'll run across, your children or students or, someone in your life that you'll go to tell them what it is they're supposed to be doing. They're like, I know. Well, how do you know when I haven't told you? How could you possibly know what to do when you have not received the instruction yet? Well, I know what to do. Okay. Turns out, an hour later, you figure out they don't know what to do. They don't know how to get it done like you wanted it done. So you can't skip the hearing part and go right to the action part because we don't know how to act, right? We don't know what we're supposed to be doing. But I think there's a larger point than that one. He's saying that there's something, that these two, when put together, will actually, make in you. Be doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving yourself. We all want to be self-aware, right? We all want to be acknowledge, who we are as, people, what we're supposed to be as people. The overarching concept here is, who are you in your spiritual character? Well, the only way to really get to that is to begin with the word and then to actually do something about that. And I think that's what James is trying to develop here. You look at all of the things that are mentioned in the entirety of the chapter, really the entirety of the book, and it's all about, proper Christian or proper spiritual, character. There are other places you could go. You could go to, the fruits of the Spirit and list those. You could go to the graces and Peter. You could go to, the armor and the pieces of armor that Paul mentions. But, here, James is talking about, Christian character, and he's getting down kind of to the heart of the matter and talking about, it comes from the Word. You got to look in the Word, and then you've got to actually accomplish something with it. So let me point out a couple of other things about this particular, context. We have to be hearers, right? We can't let it pass. We got to realize that if we are a hearer and a doer, then that is the recipe for us to create completeness in our spiritual character. It's just like anything. I mean, a recipe. If we don't have all the ingredients, then we have nothing. Nobody's going to eat that. If we go to the doctor, we get the diagnosis, we gives us the prescription, we drop it off, and we pick it up, and then we never take it. What do we have? Zero. Nothing. You got to have all the pieces, right? And, think about it this way: 1 million times 1 million times 1 million times 1 million times zero is what? Zero. At the end of the day, you've got nothing if nothing is what you do, right? So let's jump right to the end here and talk about the hearing and the doing part. That's where he tells this little story about a man looking in the mirror, sees his natural face, walks away, and doesn't remember what he looks like. And then he says, don't be like that guy. Be like a guy who, does remember. And I've heard people say, time and time again that, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we see the flaws, we see all of these things, but then when we turn away, we don't remember those things. So we're walking around all day with those things there, we just don't remember they're there. Well, the problem with that is it doesn't really say any of that. It doesn't really say any of that in the book of James. But I think when we do that, we're kind of giving the wrong impression about where James is driving this point. I think his point is that it's absurd to think that you can look at your face in the mirror and then turn away and seconds later forget what you look like. I think that's an absurdity, and I think that's the point we're supposed to get. It's kind of like the point that Jesus makes when he says, don't look at the speck in your brother's eye when you've got a beam sticking out. It's just so absurd. Nobody would do that, right? And yet some people do that in a spiritual sense. Well, he says, don't be like that spiritually. When it comes to this idea of, Christian or spiritual character, don't be the person who, looks at the way God made you. That's the word, right? You look in the word and you're supposed to see the way God made you, the way things are supposed to be. That's why James uses this word, in the ESV says natural face. It literally means the face you were born with. Now, nobody looks in the mirror and sees the face that they were born with. I'm 50 years old. I don't see the face that I'm born with. Newborns see the face that they're born with. Okay? Nobody else does. All right? So, when you look in the face, when you look in the Bible, you need to be looking for the way that God made you. Just like you look to the Bible and find the way or the character that God created in you and wants to be recreated in you as you become a child of God and live that way. It's like we look in a mirror and then we turn away from that mirror, remembering who we are. Well, do we look in the book? Do we look in the Bible? Do we look in this place that tells us all about Christian character, the way we were made? And then do we remember that as we live our lives? Living lives the way that God intended them to be? Living lives the way that God had made us to be? And I think that's the point that he's trying to make. It's absurd to think that a man is going to look at himself in a mirror and seconds later forget what he looks like. Similarly, it is just as absurd to look in the book called the Bible, see the person that God made you to be and wants you to be, and then turn away and do something totally different, and to not be that way. Well, the application, what do we get from it? Well, I think that we need to understand that we've got to study, but you've got to put it into action. And the biggest action you can take is the action that changes you. I thank you for tuning in. This has been your Daily Dose.